Hello again, Tiffany and Melody from Sky Squad here with a follow-up video on coming out as plural for the Plural Positivity World Conference 2020. In the previous video, we explained our personal experiences with coming out as plural to various people in our lives and in various online and IRL communities. This second video, follow-up to that one, contains advice for coming out to different kinds of people and people of various relationship types and levels. The advice in this video is inspired by our own personal experiences with coming out and our own perceptions of certain relationship dynamics, as well as some observations of how our friends and acquaintances have come out as plural. Before we say anything else, we want to sort of give a bottom line for this. With any situation, you shouldn't force yourself to come out to anyone just because you think you should be honest with them or that you owe it to the plural community to come out as plural. This is information that you have a right to keep private for your safety and comfort. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. You should not come out unless you feel confident, bold, and safe enough to do so. So in most cases, especially if you're not as close to the person, it's probably best to introduce the topic casually in conversation when it becomes relevant rather than just bringing it up out of nowhere. That makes it seem more natural and probably not as jarring to process conversationally. But if you're bringing it up with the intention, like the full intention of coming out, then you can probably just bring it up once you feel comfortable and ready to do so. A generally safe way to come out is to try and bring up plurality as a topic of interest first, rather than admit to personally experiencing it. This will allow you to not only explain plurality to them before explaining your personal situation, but also gauge their response to the concept and determine if it's safe for you specifically to admit that this is something you experience. And also, when you come out as plural, you're very much allowed to keep people on a need-to-know basis. You're not obligated to tell people exactly how many headmates you have, nor do you have to introduce them to every single hubmate or tell them anything about everyone in your system. You're also not obligated to explain the exact details about how your system works, even to other systems. If you want to tell them certain things, then go for it. But don't feel like you have to lay out everything just because you decided to come out about it. So, first of all, strangers. There's strangers on the internet, and then there's strangers on the streets. By the streets, I mean like people you might encounter on, for example, public transportation, store workers, maybe like a fellow customer, someone asking you for the time, etc. Unless you want to be a walking advertisement for the concept of plurality, you really don't need to come out to every stranger you meet on the street. Like, you wouldn't really tell some random stranger your birthday or your sexuality or if you're trans or where you live. Plurality is something that you really don't need to tell anyone unless you want to, preferably when it's actually relevant to the conversation. Most strangers probably won't really care about it. For online, it's a little bit safer to out yourself as plural in non-plural spaces, even to total strangers, because of the way that online interaction works. People who don't particularly care can just look the other way, and most people generally won't even mind or might even be interested. And if people treat you badly because of it, well, you can block them, or you can leave the group or server or page or wherever it is. Aside from all this, you can also hide behind the username and not necessarily reveal any identifying information. So it's a little bit safer to come out because there's not that same face-to-face connection. Of course, you should still use discretion when coming out in a totally unfamiliar online forum. For us, we feel bold and obligated enough to do so, but you don't have to. If you don't quite trust a certain group or community, then you can wait things out while you read the atmosphere and see how comfortable you are with disclosing such information to those people, and you can get a read for how they might respond to such a thing. Acquaintances basically includes people that you see on a sort of semi-regular basis, but you don't really have a sort of special connection to. Maybe it's a clerk of a store that you visit frequently, or a neighbor, or the mailman, or the receptionist at your clinic, or your pet's doctor, things like that. These are people who you could reasonably strike up a conversation with about semi-personal things or your interests without really any heavy commitment to it. The kind of person that you might tell, oh, I've been feeling kind of sick lately, or you could, brag about your kids getting accepted to college, or stuff like that. The main point here is that this is probably a person that you could teach something new in your brief time interacting, assuming you interact with them long enough to hold a conversation. In these situations, you might feel comfortable enough to mention it as a personal situation, then go ahead and do that. They might think you strange for it because, well, plurality is not this super well understood concept, but it would be a great way to get some sort of education in there. Again, of course, if you're not, if you don't feel bold or safe enough to do so, then don't do it. Or if you sort of want to gauge their reaction to it instead of coming out, then again, like earlier, you can mention it as sort of a topic of interest rather than a personal experience, and see how they react, and see if you think they'll be receptive to knowing, hey, this is something I experienced. For friends, it's probably easier to sort of tell how they're going to react beforehand because, well, you're closer and you presumably already talk to them on a regular basis, and you kind of judge their reaction beforehand since you know them better. Of course, there's different levels of friendship and different levels of understanding you can have about them. As explained earlier, you can try to bring it up as a concept first to get them acquainted to it, see how they react, and determine who of your friend group is the most accepting and trustworthy to tell. It's always good to sort of have people who are on your side when you're bringing up something sensitive like this, something personal that you experience. And in case things go bad with the rest of the friend group, you have at least someone who can back you up. Like we said earlier, it really should be on a need-to-know basis because this is still your personal information and you're still entitled to your privacy, even with people that you're closer to. If problems arise because of your plurality and you think you might need to come out as plural to help resolve a conflict, or you need to get some accommodation or an understanding from your friends, like say if you're prone to switching in the middle of a conversation, then it'd be best to weigh the pros and cons and your options and see who you can come out to and how much information is safe to give them. And now for partners. This is probably going to be the longest section, so bear with me a little bit. For partners, it can be very easy to feel like you're obligated to open up to them about your plurality, but again, it's a matter of feeling safe and comfortable enough to do so. And of course, it's a matter of trust above anything else. Do you trust this person enough with this information? You'll probably still have insecurities about this, considering the weight of the relationship is a little bit more than that of a friendship. If you want to gauge their possible acceptance levels, you can try asking them their opinions on other marginalized communities or subjects like mental health, LGBTQ, racism, etc. If they're accepting about these things, then they're probably going to be accepting about plural stuff, but that's not really a way to know for sure. As previously mentioned with the other relationship types, the best thing to start with is introducing them to plurality as a concept and see how they react to it. Or if they already know some stuff, you can sort of see what their understanding is so you can get them on the same page and fill any gaps in their knowledge. Fill in any gaps in their knowledge. It'd probably be good to have some answers or resources prepared in case they have questions. When you're ready, you can probably just tell them, hey, we're plural, however you want to phrase it. You can open up that line of conversation by saying, hey, this is something really important to me and it impacts my life in major ways. Please, take this seriously. If they react badly, you should probably work to help them understand it and cope with it, especially, your partners. And working through things is a very important part of managing and maintaining relationships, especially of that nature. If they're not going to treat you well under the knowledge that you're plural, it might be time to seek a new partner since this is, it's a big part of your life, and suppressing it around a person you should otherwise feel safe around can be very damaging. Once you're out, it's probably a good idea to give information as necessary, such as who will be fronting, if any fronters need special accommodations, etc. and establish physical boundaries. Establish boundaries based on headmates. You're going to want to establish who in the system is and isn't actually dating them, what or married to them, etc. What specific needs and boundaries individual people have, things like that. Stuff like, preferred contact or affection levels, pronouns, even any allergies they might have that your partner will need to be aware of. If you end up sort of accidentally coming out as plural, maybe you say we by habit, or you mention that a headmate did this or that, the best way to follow it up is to just be casual about it as best you can. Ultimately, you and your partner are going to have to discuss and decide how your plurality is going to affect the relationship, and if they can handle something like this in their lives. They're not necessarily responsible for dealing with your plural stuff, but if they're going to be a partner, then they should be at least cope with the fact that, well, this is a thing that's going to happen, and they're going to have to be prepared to deal with aspects of it, such as different fronters or people with certain interaction needs. And again, this is all need-to-know basis. You don't owe anyone a list of your headmates or detailed information about them, about who's in your system, or even how you formed. If you're comfortable sharing it, then great. If they show interest in these things, that's also great, but you still have a right to your privacy. If they're insisting that they need to know this information because, oh, I'm your partner, you have to tell me, it might be a red flag that either they don't understand it and the need for privacy, or they're a bit controlling, and again, you might need to seek another partner. Of course, all of this generally goes for other relationship types too, but in this case, you're probably interacting with them more and more physically or emotionally close to them, so this might become more relevant or important for such a situation. Now, things can get a little bit complicated when talking about familial relationships. On the one hand, there may be a sort of legal or social obligation to stay with them and keep interacting with them, especially if you're a minor who can't just leave the house and your parents don't like that you're plural. So take extra care when coming out to family. A good strategy, like I alluded to earlier, is to come out first to family members that you like and trust, and then work your way outwards towards the less favored and accepting ones. For example, maybe you're really close to an aunt or a sibling, and you can tell them first to get their support before you try telling, say, that one uncle who's known for being a bigot, or your parents who might not be so understanding or supportive of psychological or marginalized issues. The point of this is to sort of gain a support system while you're working your way towards coming out, so that if something happens, you have people who know and support you to fall back on. Other than that, a lot of the same tips really apply here. Open up the conversation with, hey, this is important to me, or try to tell them about plurality to gauge your interest and support levels. Keep information on a need-to-know basis, and explain things when you feel safe and ready. And finally, we have bosses, coworkers, health professionals, etc. So unless it severely affects your situation in some way, or you need some kind of accommodation that can only be given when the situation is understood, you shouldn't feel obligated to come out to any people you know in a work or health setting. It's really none of their business unless it affects your ability to actually work, or it affects your health in some way. Some examples of when you probably should come out, but don't have to unless you feel comfortable or safe doing so, or you need to disclose the information for the sake of important accommodations like allergies. If you're a dissociative system that can't handle switches, a little may come out during work, or a certain headmate has an allergy to a certain kind of medicine. Stuff like that is probably when you should come out for the sake of your health, but you don't need to necessarily, again, tell all of the information about your system, just what you need in order to be accommodated. In the work example, you're probably going to want to inform your supervisor that you need an accommodation, or let a trusted coworker know so they can help any confused headmates or keep an eye out for dissociation and stuff like that. But if you're not able to safely come out in the workplace, instead try leaving a note on your phone or your locker for any, emergency situations, so that way any confused headmates will know what to do. In the case of the health professional, again, only come out if it's sort of relevant to your health, such as if you have a headmate that might pose a danger to the body, or if a certain headmate needs special prescriptions or conditions. If you choose to do so because it will make things easier, then of course feel free to do so. If there's a chance that a given healthcare professional will misunderstand the situation, treat you a certain way, definitely proceed with caution, but probably err on the side of whatever is going to, help your system the most. So weigh the pros and cons before doing anything. So, at the risk of sounding a bit like a broken record, I'm going to summarize some of the information that we've said in this video. First off, you don't have to come out to anyone or give them every piece of information about your system. You have a right to your secrecy and privacy. You should only come out if you feel comfortable and safe enough to do so. However, you may find that you need to explain your plurality for health reasons, because maybe a headmate has an allergy or needs a prescription, or you have memory gaps that a health care provider or supervisor may need to be aware of. Most people probably won't care or will otherwise be accepting, but there may still be people who will react negatively, so you need to be prepared for that. If you want to gauge how someone will react to your plurality, try explaining plural things first and frame it as a sort of special personal interest, and see what they think about it and how they react to it. For more casual relationships or with strangers, it's probably best to bring up the topic as it becomes relevant in the conversation rather than just bringing it up out of nowhere. This can help make it easier for the other people to process the information in conversation. For closer relationships such as partnerships or familial relationships, make sure to establish boundaries and preferences with regard to particular headmates so no one ends up confused or uncomfortable. So, that's basically it. Thanks for watching. Apologies again for all the repetition, and we wish you the best of luck in your coming out. Please share this video with other people to help others who may be considering it. As we said with the last video, be sure to check out Plural Events YouTube channel for other videos connected to the Plural Positivity World Conference. See ya!